Rev up your engines!
Darius says, how much does an automatic transmission limit the amount of modifications you can do to your vehicle? Well, it does by quite a bit, especially in a modern car. Because, see, modern cars, the engine and the transmission, they work together by sensors and computer modules. If you modify an engine thing, it's going to indirectly change how the transmission works. So the only way you can do it correctly is you'd have to find a real pro who knew how to test it on a dynamometer and how the transmission shift and be able to reprogram everything to work correctly. And let me tell you, there aren't too many guys around that can do that kind of stuff. You want a faster car? Go buy a faster car. Don't try to modify it if it's got an automatic transmission unless you're going to change everything out. It's like these guys that I know that they're into speed and they'll put in turbochargers, superchargers. They'll put nitrous kits in to get a lot of horsepower. Then the transmissions will just burn out because they're not made to take that kind of power. 200 horsepower. You start throwing at 500 horsepower, it's just going to burn the thing out, too. You got to realize that. PJ's Gold-Minded Mechanic says, do you have to change both brake calipers if one goes bad? It's a good idea to change both calipers so that they brake evenly. But let's say one's all messed up and the other one's working perfectly fine. Like maybe the left front one locks up, but the right one works perfectly fine. If you're cheap, put the left one on and then take it for a good drive when there's no one around, Sunday morning or something. Hit the brakes hard. If they stop fine and they don't pull left or right and you don't get any ABS warning lights coming on, then it can be perfectly fine that the other one isn't worn that bad. You never know, but I mean, let's say you live up in Detroit or something and the one's all old and rusty and falling apart. The other one's going to be old and rusty too. In that case, I'd say change them both out. So you're not going to have any problems in the near future. If they're all corroded, you might as well, because for most cars these days, you can get remanufactured calipers at a reasonable price. They're pretty simple, you know, they're just a big thing, and the only thing inside them are these rubber O-rings that seal the pistons that go in and out, and then a cover seal on top of that to keep the dust and water out. So rebuilt ones are often only, you know, 50, 60 bucks. They don't cost that much. The new ones, yeah, they can be outrageous, but the rebuilt ones, they work fine. They don't cost that much. 100 says, Scotty, what do you think of an 04 Lexus LS430 with 110,000 miles? I am not a fan of V8 Lexus vehicles because the V8 ones, they just break down more. I'll give you an example. The starters in the middle of the back of the engine, you got to take the intake manifold off. It's usually going to cost you over $1,000 to change a starter on one of those things. And with 110,000 miles and 16 years old, now, if you're absolutely nuts about the car and it runs like a cherry, don't pay much for it. I wouldn't give more than, at 16 years, I wouldn't give more than $2-3 grand for that car, tops. But if you get it for that and it runs good now and you want a toy, go ahead. But don't think you can drive it 20, 30,000 miles a year without spending a fortune eventually repairing the thing. Michael Jones says, 2018 CRV gas in the oil. Should I take it to the dealer or watch and change the oil at 3,000 miles? Yeah, well, I'd definitely change it. I'd change it right now. They have had problems with that oil dilution on those CRVs. They are coming out with a new oil in May of 2020 that's supposed to help with that. Definitely use that oil when it comes out. But for the time being, change your oil. And it would be my car, I would change the oil I change it now, and I change it every 3,000 miles, because oil dilution is insidious. It doesn't destroy your car right away. It can take tens of thousands of miles to actually do some damage. So I change it now, and I would definitely get that new oil in May of 2020 when it comes out. So, man, E-Man says, Scotty, I got a 2010 Honda Accord. I hit a deer at 55. Front driver's fender, headlight, bumper cover, and a driver door all damaged. Is it worth fixing? Drove it back 150 miles home. You got a lot of damage. But on the other hand, you said you drove it 150 miles back home. If everything still works, my advice is look for guys that work on stuff like that on the weekends. Look for guys who work in body shops, but on the weekends, they do body work in their own garage. Save money. Tell them you don't care if they get parts from a junkyard or if they buy Chinese-made fenders. Tell them you don't care. And see what they say about fixing it. If it still runs and everything, you know, go right ahead. And then like the driver's door, heck, you can get a whole door from a junkyard for $100 half the time. So just if you can find a guy that does body work, or if you don't care if the color's matching, go to some junkyards, buy the parts yourself, and bolt them on. We used to do that when I was a kid all the time. Cool791 says, should I buy a 2000 Celica GT with 190,000 miles for only $500 even if it burns oil? Only if you're willing to put another engine in it. 2000 Celica was the first year they went to that crappy design, the Yamaha designed engine, and they were disaster areas. They burn oil, they blow up. Every single customer of mine that has one of those is either on their second or their third engine because they just weren't very good. I personally wouldn't buy it. Now, if it was a 99, I'd jump at it. But a 2000, I kind of stay away from that. That's what finished the Celicas off. That's called, I believe, the 7th generation Celica. And they only made those for like 6 years, and then they stopped making them. They didn't make them anymore. And they were a cheaper car, because I know I just did a video on a 99 Celica convertible, and that thing listed for like $25,000 when it was new. Well, the next year, 2000, a Celica listed for $15,000. So it's a much cheaper made car. It's just the way that it goes. They were cheaper made and they didn't hold up. And then they stopped making them. So I wouldn't buy it. Jeffrey Mohammed says, what's the best way to help a lazy first-time car owner to be more responsible? Watch my videos and heed my warnings about people screwing things up by not changing the oil, by not keeping it cool and clean, by not watching the temperature gauge when you're driving. So if it starts to get high, if you have an older car, you turn it off before you blow an engine. You might make a little list. Big letters. Put it on an envelope or something. Stick it in your glove box. Take it out every once in a while and look at it. And do things like air pressure in tires once a month, just to make sure they're full of air and they're not going flat. Things like that. If it's an old car, go under the hood once a month. Check the brake fluid, the engine oil, the coolant, first thing in the morning when it's cold. Now, if you're really irresponsible about cars, buy a brand new Toyota Corolla or Honda Civic with a standard transmission that can last forever. And then all you got to do is remember to change the oil every 7,000 miles or so. And you can just write that one thing down. Alex Garza says, Scotty, I have a Prius, 2013, 242,000 miles. It takes a quart of oil every 2,000 miles. Any thoughts? Yeah, live with it. That particular engine is called an Atkinson cycle engine. It's an engine unlike a lot of the other engines out there. And as they age with that kind of mileage, they're going to burn a little bit of oil. Now, you can change the PCV valve. Doesn't cost that much. Maybe that'll help. If it helps, great. Go to AutoZone, buy one. It costs like $10 or something. But if it still burns a quart of oil every 1,000 miles, just live with it. It means your engine is worn, and in order to fix it, you would have to rebuild the whole engine, which costs $4,000 or $5,000. So oil is cheap, engines aren't. Just keep adding the oil as it burns and live with it. Steph says, Scotty, can the TPMS be permanently shut down? Okay. The tire pressure monitoring systems are there to tell you if your tires are low. Most systems in most cars, you can't turn it off. They're just there. Now, I mean, if it drives you nuts and it's a warning light, you can take the dash apart and you can take it apart and either take the bulb out, or if it has an LED, you can get a pair of little clippers. You can clip the LED so that it doesn't have electricity going through it anymore, and then the light won't come on anymore. But there's no real way of getting it out. They want you to be warned about it. It's a safety thing. And let's say yours was broken, you didn't want to spend a bunch of money. Watch that video I just made, because for anywhere from $50 to $100, you can buy these kits that screw on each tire, and then you got a monitor that shows the pressure there. Instead of having to spend maybe $800 changing all the sensors and having your TPMS system worked on, you can bypass it like that and then have a little monitor. They even make them that'll read on your phone, so you can put it on your phone and it'll warn you when the tires are low. So you could do that if you wanted. But guys that really don't care at all, if they don't like the light, they'll get a piece of black tape and they'll tape over it so they don't see it anymore. Just remember to check your tire pressure though if you do that, because you don't want to get a flat in the middle of nowhere. Joe Brown says, Scotty, got an 03 Jeep Grand Cherokee. There's fluid dripping from under the passenger side of the hood. What could it be? Anytime something's leaking, you got to figure out what it is. And it's pretty simple, actually, because the engine oil gets dirty, gets blackish. Take the dipstick, smell it, feel it. See if it's the same stuff that's dripping down. Look at the valve cover gasket. Oil pressure sending you. That can be leaking. Let's say it's transmission fluid. Well, that's reddish colored. If it's slimy and has a sicky sweet smell, that's antifreeze. Then you look for a hole in the radiator hose. A gasket leaking. Like that gasket be leaking. And that'll leak coolant out too. Figure out what's leaking and then go from there. And if it gets confusing, you can't figure out where the leak's coming from, you can buy some ultraviolet leak detector. AutoZone sells a kit for like $25. You pour it into each system, then you look and see where the green dye comes out with the little UV light, and you can find where the leak is that way. I do that all the time. Steve Gonzalez says, Scotty, is my 2012 Infiniti FX50 a good sports SUV? Well, they are for a reasonable amount of time and a reasonable amount of mileage. Almost all my customers that bought those things, brand new, liked them, and they were relatively trouble-free for maybe the first 100,000 miles. But then, whoo, the bottom fell out, and they started to cost a fortune to fix. So I would not buy one that's more than 6 or 7 years old, and I definitely wouldn't buy one that has more than 100,000 miles on it. But they can be a lot of fun to drive around with if you don't mind spending the money for a new one and keep it a certain period of time. But don't ever pay a whole bunch of money for a used one that has high mileage, because they turn into endless money pits. I had a guy just do that a month ago, and now he's kicking himself. I told him, I said, why didn't you bring it to me before you bought it? I would have told you not to buy it, but he did. Now he's stuck with it, and he's got to decide, well, I'm going to sell it and lose a little bit of money, or fix it up and lose a whole bunch of money. So he's kind of pushing toward and trying to sell it and lose a little bit of money. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.